Hey, are you a high achiever who struggles with perfectionism? Do you get stuck in the cycle of overthinking? Do you do everything for everyone else because you think otherwise it won't get done? Do you feel like you should come with a disclaimer? Hi, I'm anxious. Hey, I'm Katy. Full disclosure, I'm not a therapist, doctor, or mental health professional. I'm just a career mama who also struggles with anxiety. For me, anxiety reared its head at the most inconvenient times, when I wanted to be present with my family, at those high pressure business meetings, when I was laying in bed awake at night worrying instead of sleeping. I just wanted to relax and be able to have fun, and I know that you do too. What if you found tools to manage your anxiety? What if you knew how to enjoy life even though you are anxious? Look, it's time to put down that third cup of coffee and swap it for some lemon water. We're going to get control over anxiety so it can stop controlling you. Let's go, girl. Dear sweet anxious high achiever, welcome to the High I'm Anxious podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that you're doing well. I can't wait to share with you about today's topic, but if you have not yet listened to the last episode number 89, about processing failure, I would encourage you to pause this episode and go back and listen to that one first, because today's episode is going to build on that a little bit. And I think that it's really important to allow yourself to process some painful failures first before you dive into the tools that I'm going to teach you in today's episode. So go back and do that if you haven't already listened to episode number 89. So in today's episode, I want to build on the topic of being able to process failures by learning to handle them and handle them a little bit better. I'm sure you're used to handling failures well or not, maybe sometimes better than others. And in today's episode, I want to offer you a little bit of a way to reframe how you think about failures. So, you've probably heard people give the example of little kids learning how to do things, and that you would give them grace essentially for failures, if that's what you want to call them, because they're little kids and they're simply learning. Maybe that's where that saying came from. If you're not um, failing, you're not learning, and failing is just learning, or something like that. But you see little kids learning to walk, and they stand up and fall, and they take a step and it's shaky, and they need to lean onto somebody or something for help, and they do it again and again and again, not well, until they become good at it. And they don't fall on the floor and say, "Oh, I'm so ashamed of myself for falling down. I'm never going to do this again. I'm such an idiot. How could I do that?" They don't engage in those kinds of behaviors that somehow we as adults have learned to engage in, the beating ourselves up for failures, the shaming ourselves for failures. They just keep trying again and again. Now, they might get frustrated, they might cry, they might whine, but they keep trying and they keep trying and they keep trying. And I want you to try to see yourself as somebody who's just learning. You are trying out a project at work, and it's difficult, and it's not black and white, and it's maybe not something you've done before, or maybe it's something you've done before, but some of the facts, circumstances, considerations, tools, people involved, etc., are different, therefore changing it so you've not done that exact same thing before. And so you're learning through it. And I want you to pay attention, sweet high achiever, to when you get into a moment where you feel frustrated, you want to beat yourself up because things aren't going as you'd like them to. You want to shame yourself, like, "Oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot. How could I have done that? How could I have forgotten to do XYZ? Why did I say that way?" And I want you to pause, and I want you to just notice that. And I'd like you to offer yourself a little bit of compassion and grace. And I want you to think about the fact that it's an opportunity for learning. Maybe the stakes are a little bit higher, or in your mind, you feel like they're higher than for a little kid learning to walk. But when I put it that way, are they really, sweet, anxious, high achiever, with what you're doing? Are the stakes actually higher? At least in your mind, you think that they're really high. Therefore, you must do this thing well, completely, etc. And so you engage in that internal dialogue that is beating yourself up, shaming yourself, feeling like a failure. And so catch yourself when you're in these moments. And if it helps you, which I have tried this recently, and I will say it has helped me, picture yourself as a little kid. And how would you talk to yourself in that moment? Would you say, oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot. How could I have done that? Or would you look at yourself and say, it's all right, sweetheart. This is new. This is different. We can figure this out together. I'm here for you. Let's try this again. And I know that might sound a little bit cheesy, but it feels really good. And I can say that from firsthand experience because it's something that I've tried a few times recently, along with this processing of the failures. And I've found it to be really helpful for me. It's almost like a slate clearing type of exercise. So I notice that I'm feeling like I'm failing, and I have started to beat myself up over it or shame myself. And I take time to process going into my body, like I talked about in this last episode, feeling the feelings. And then I think of it from that different perspective, like I'm someone who's just learning. And there have been a few times where I've even pictured myself as a little kid and had a little chat with myself in my mind about how I can get through this. So, let me give you a little example. I had a day off and I was so excited to have the day off, and I had 10 million things on my to-do list. And I thought I had thought out really well all of the things that I had to do. And I told myself that I wouldn't be too strict on what order I would do things in, but instead I would just make sure I was doing something on the list that felt good to me in the moment. And so I spent a chunk of my day doing that. But then when I got to the end of the day, I realized, oh no, there was something on the to-do list that should have been a higher priority, and I was a little bit worried about how I was going to get it done. And so I wanted to enter into that spiral of beating myself up for how could I have done that, shaming myself for I'm so irresponsible, and now I'm going to have to find a way to get this done. And how am I going to do that without impacting myself or others in a negative way? On and on and on. And I caught this kind of early on. And so I sat down, I did a little quick processing. It didn't take long, you guys, maybe 2 minutes max. And then I just had a little chat with myself. I'm like, you know what? It's okay. I had told myself I was going to do what felt good. That's what I did. And now I can find a way through this. And maybe next time I might focus on my prioritizing a little bit differently, but for now, it's going to be okay. And I can find a way to get this done. And I'm learning through these experiences. And I bet you anything that as a high achiever, you're somebody who really values and loves learning. So I think that this is a reframe that could be kind of easy for us to make to bridge that gap between being really hard on ourselves to the extent of being mean, self-flagellating to some extent, to getting to a place where we can work through things because we're learning. We're gathering information, we're gathering experiences, and through that information and those experiences, we're able to learn. And maybe next time we can prioritize a little bit differently. And if nothing else, maybe next time, if we don't prioritize differently, we might not beat ourselves up so badly. We might not shame ourselves for our quote perceived failure because we're able to look at ourselves through a little bit different light, process, and have some self-compassion for ourselves. That's all I have for you today, sweet high achiever. If you haven't yet joined my free Facebook group, please do that. The link to join is in the show notes. It's a community of incredible high achieving women just like you. We're there for a little bit of support and encouragement. I'd love to see you there. Again, the link to join is in the show notes. I'd love to have you in that group. Thanks so much for being here today with me, sweet high achiever. I can't wait to talk with you next week. Hey friend, thanks for being here. Did today's episode help you feel more in control of your anxiety? Did it inspire you to rest or relax? Or maybe it challenged you to really look at why anxiety is a part of your life. If so, I'd love to hear from you. If you would take 30 seconds, pause this episode, scroll down in Apple Podcasts and leave me a review. I would be so grateful. See you next week. Disclaimer, I am not a medical professional and this podcast is not providing therapy or medical treatment. Contents of the podcast are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult your healthcare provider with your health questions and concerns.